today's Top Boxing News.
Okay, we'll start with this. Our recap of this past weekend's WBC interim title fight in the women's super featherweight division between former champion Delphine Persoon and the challenger of South Korea, Shin.
Yeah.
I knew this fight was going to be physically taxing on Delphine Persoon, who's 38 years old, the aging fighter, and apparently Delphine knew it too, which is why she elected to break character.
Pressure fighters don't often do that.
This past weekend, Delphine Persoon did moving lateral, boxing off the back foot, walking Shin into jabs, into straight punches as Shin advanced.
Shin, a mid-range to inside fighter and a mirror image of Delphine Persoon most of the time.
A pressure fighter, a volume puncher. It seems that Delphine Persoon, she didn't want to have a war akin to the war that she had with Maiva Hamadouche, another pressure fighter like herself years ago. At this age, it doesn't behoove her to get into those kinds of slugfests.
Not at 38 years old, she elected to box.
Box and punch, engaging only intermittently as Shin kept the pressure on. Shin, who's 10 years younger than Delphine Persoon, though just as aggressive, just as explosive, with just as good an engine.
Very smart of Delphine Persoon to do this.
Delphine Persoon has always exhibited a good chin, good punch resistance, good cardio to keep the pressure on and keep the punches coming from the opening round to the final round. And she used those attributes to her advantage by mitigating the exchanges, mitigating the damage that at 38 years old, you don't really need to get into a war.
Even if you can take what she's got, do you want to?
Delphine Persoon won a points decision yesterday in her native Belgium, retaining her WBC interim status. She remains the mandatory challenger to this division's undisputed champion, Alicia Baumgardner.
Alicia, who's going to be in action very soon opposite the ring, the woman that gave her only professional loss, Christina Lenardatu, a common opponent between her and Delphine Persoon.
Christina gave Alicia her first professional loss, and Delphine gave Christina her first professional loss. They are intertwined, these three fighters.
That being said, don't expect Delphine Persoon to fight the fight that she fought this past weekend with Shin opposite the ring, Alicia Baumgardner. The strategy will be entirely different.
Delphine Persoon understood that Shin is a mirror image of herself 10 years ago, and 10 years later, she can't afford to get into that kind of war ahead of what could be an undisputed title fight, another title shot. She understood that you've got to save something for later, so you can't just sell out with Shin the way you did years ago with Maiva Hamadouche.
Alicia Baumgardner is a strong puncher, but she's not a volume puncher.
I'd wager that Alicia has more single punching power than both Delphine Persoon and Shin, but it's really only one or two shots at a time, whereas with Shin, she's more of a Gatling gun. If Alicia Baumgardner is a sniper, then Shin and Delphine Persoon would be classified as automatics. Delphine Persoon has grown wise in her old age throughout all of these experiences. Crafty, boxing the puncher and punching the boxer. I've no doubts that she will return to her aggressive come-forward ways, front foot heavy,
throwing combinations,
straight punches from the outside coming in order to close the distance. The win by Persoon on that night preserved her in line as the WBC's #1 contender in the super featherweight division. She is recognized mandatory challenger by all four sanctioning bodies to undisputed junior lightweight queen Alicia Baumgardner.
A useful bit of information.
She is the mandatory challenger across all four alphabet organizations for Alicia.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Set to confront the woman who beat her 4 to 5 years ago, a pressure fighter that at least then had a stylistic advantage over her in Christina Lenardatu. If she beats Christina, it's not over.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Delphine Persoon will follow shortly, right behind her. Not all pressure fighters are created equal. Christina Lenardatu and Delphine Persoon, they have the same base style with subtle differences and nuances.
Yeah.
Christina is elusive and explosive.
Yeah.
That's how she applies pressure in spurts, whereas the pressure you get from Delphine is more constant.
Relentless.
She sacrifices form and function, barreling forward, throwing punches in bunches, taking one in order to give one, and she can usually wear out her opponents, tire them, and beat them into submission, doing just that.
Outworking them.
If she doesn't stop them, whereas Alicia Baumgardner is more prone to shooting long-range shots and creating space, moving lateral, trying to slow the tempo of a fight. fight.
Jabbing and shooting counter shots, staying long distance, long range.
And only stepping into her punches after she gets the other girl hurt, after she lands big and goes in for the kill. Alicia, for the most part, is a pure boxer with a lot of punching power.
But she's a pure boxer. She's economic and defensively minded, mobile. The opposite of Delphine.
Beyond the Cristina Leonardatu fight, if Alicia wins, is she going to defend those titles against Delphine?
She may be 38 years old, but she's still got it, and she's still a credible threat to Alicia Baumgardner in any super featherweight.
Baumgardner versus Persoon would put asses in the seats. A lot of people still think that Delphine won that first Katie Taylor fight.
Can Alicia Baumgardner beat Delphine Persoon in better fashion than Katie did?
In the hurt business, there really is only one way to find out. In men's welterweight news, ahead of their long-awaited, long-anticipated, undisputed showdown last week, we saw both Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence Jr., and Stephen A. Smith of ESPN via conference call
exchanging pleasantries.
Terrence Crawford was quoted as saying, "I assure you, it won't be like none of those other fights. I'm so excited. I can't wait." To which Errol Spence Jr. stated, "You see his work, you see my work. As soon as I get in the ring, I'm stepping, and I expect him to step too. We're going to put on a great show." Some queried,
does Errol seem passive, almost timid?
Saw the press conference myself last week. In light of everything that was going on, I was unable to chime in on it at that time, but I do feel like Errol Spence Jr. seems almost...
He doesn't have a sparkling personality, you know. He's a good welterweight, he's all those things, but in terms of personality, he's never exhibited much.
Takes two guys to make a fight, so we have to give him that credit, that this is what he wanted. He wants to be here, though he doesn't seem as energized as Terrence. He doesn't seem as enthusiastic. Terrence Crawford, who said, "If I get him hurt, I'm going for the knockout. I don't have a 100% ratio of knockouts in the welterweight division for nothing. Ever since I moved up, I became meaner, stronger, punching harder. So, of course, if the knockout comes..."
That was on ESPN First Take with Stephen A. Smith.
Some are left to wonder, why is the fight all of a sudden now materializing? Why did Errol come around to the idea of facing this man when he was set to be facing someone else? And Errol stated, "I'm a man of my word. Even if staying out of the ring a whole year, this is the fight I wanted, and I stuck to my guns. I was like, I'm not fighting until I fight Terrence Crawford."
There are certain realities about this that need to be addressed. Errol Spence had an easier option, an easier route that he could have stayed on. He could have boxed Keith Thurman.
He chose not to. He chose to go straight into the Crawford fight instead. Why is that? It doesn't benefit him. It doesn't behoove him to have to shake off ring rust in a fight like this off an year layoff.
Over a year the night of the fight.
What is this guy thinking? To that, Rick Glacier imparted his own insights, his own thoughts, and he stated, "I'm looking forward to July 29th almost as much as Terrence Crawford is. As for Errol Spence, no one ever enjoys facing the day they're going to lose their undefeated status. And Errol knows that day is Saturday, July 29th.
That if Errol Spence seems a bit dejected and not as enthusiastic as Terrence, it's because he knows what's coming underneath it all.
At minimum, he has to know that this guy's more of a threat to him than Sean Porter or Danny Garcia was.
Kell Brook.
You stood a better chance of beating Kell Brook in his own backyard than you stand to beating this guy in yours.
Here in the States.
That at minimum, this is a very different fight from any other fight that he has had so far. And the same applies to Terrence. This is the biggest fight of Terrence Crawford's career, make no mistake. But you see his attitude, you see his energy, his excitement.
He can't wait.
I maintain my original position that if we are getting this fight, it's because Errol Spence Jr. has run out of options at welterweight or junior middle. There's no fight that he can have that has the profile and the backstory, the stage, that this fight has. This is the biggest bang for your buck fight when it comes to Errol.
Yeah, you could have fought Keith Thurman, but you're not going to sell with Keith what you can sell with this.
Even if you out there don't think that this fight can sell in excess of 1 million pay-per-view buys the same way that the Davis versus Garcia fight did, all the same, this still sells more than a Keith Thurman fight. The paying public doesn't want to see a Keith Thurman fight. It's about time we got this one.
Yeah.
We got this fight. If Errol Spence Jr. loses, then he loses with honor.
To some degree.
Proving that he's a man of his word in a bid to become his division's undisputed champion and realizing that goal. Realizing that dream. Better to lose to Terrence than somebody like Jaron Ennis, than somebody like Virgil Ortiz, or God forbid, Keith Thurman.
Because Errol Spence Jr. is in possession of 3 of the 4 major alphabet titles, the sharks have started to circle him.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown. That's what they say. So better to lose to this guy in an undisputed bid than lose to one of them.
See what they said? He said, why would I go fight you when I can go over there and do the easy route and fight Sean?
When he get a belt, you want to go over there. Keith Thurman want to go over there. And now y'all want to say, oh, I ain't fought nobody. But I got a belt now, so
okay. Sean Porter got a belt too.
So now
Sean Porter got a belt too. Sean Porter. So why would I go to easy road and knock Sean Porter out? Why wouldn't I?
That was out of his mouth.
Sean Porter, easy?
That was out of his mouth.
But I also heard Errol tell you, man, you like the ass. When I stop you, all they gonna do is say you too small.
And what I tell him?
That's little man right there. The little man right there. You know what I'm saying?
Terrence, will you guys have a fight?
Yeah, we'll fight. You too small.
You with Errol? You know how much
I don't know how much I weigh.
fat, nigga. That's what you is.
I'm not fat.
Fat.
I'm not fat, muscle.
That's fat.
It don't matter.
Yeah.
Hey, it don't matter. It don't matter.
Grab it again, son. Grab it again.
How I look at the weigh-in, though?
Grab it again.
How I look at the weigh-in,
We talking about now.
How I look at the weigh-in,
But you
though?
talking about how big
How I
you
look at the weigh-in,
is. It's
though?
fat.
You fat.
They said Sean Porter.
Come on. Yeah.
They said, hold up.
To a degree, to an extent, I feel that Errol Spence Jr. is cashing out. That's what I think. That's how I feel.
Never had to take this long.
And I don't actually think Al Heyman's initial plan, his original plan, even included a Terrence Crawford fight for Errol Spence Jr. Circumstances change.
We know what the original plan was because Errol told us.
Can we get both of them in the ring? Can we get both of them in the ring? He said, I'm fighting Mikey. Then I might fight Sean Porter, Keith Thurman.
So he didn't mention Terrence, huh?
He didn't.
I just got to call him up or something.
He got his number.
Well,
He got his number.
That was the original plan, folks. That was the original plan for Errol Spence Jr. He fought Mikey Garcia, he fought Sean Porter, but afterwards he got in a car accident, and that changed things.
Kept him out for over a year. He comes back, he fights Danny Garcia in what I felt was a tune-up fight.
He was supposed to have that Pacquiao fight, but he had a retina injury. Thus, Yordenis Ugas stood in his place, and he ended up fighting Ugas, but that didn't sell anything.
That was the alteration to the plan. Ugas wasn't part of the plan.
Same way getting into a car accident wasn't part of the plan, the same way suffering that retina injury that saw him withdraw from the Pacquiao fight. That wasn't part of the plan either.
Thus, they had to alter the plan.
Keith Thurman is still available, Keith Thurman is still out there, but the powers that be have to know. Nobody wants to see Spence versus Thurman.
Be a waste of time.
At the beginning of last year, Tim Smith, the VP of Communications at the PBC, said he didn't think people would buy Spence versus Crawford. He think it wouldn't be commercially successful. He said he felt people would steal it.
His words in January of last year.
Later on that year, we saw some kind of effort to do the fight, but without guarantees to the fighters, without a guarantee to Terrence, without a guarantee to
Spence.
Errol Spence Jr.
Likely because of what Tim Smith said. They didn't have faith in the fight. They felt people are just going to steal it.
So they didn't want to risk big purses on either guy to do the fight. Well, there's been an alteration to the plan because the news is
They've got guaranteed purses now, both of them.
where neither fighter was guaranteed any cash last year. This year, they made an alteration. I believe it's because they have to.
You can sit here and say, okay, well, all these fighters was on PBC. I don't even understand or knew where the side of the street, the wrong side, was created.
Like I said, Terry Crawford got to come across the street. Terry Crawford got to come across the street. He got to leave ESPN and come to Showtime with Fox.
Right. That's some new shit.
Till Terrence Crawford got in the picture.
So you responsible for that shit. That's what you're saying.
Like I said, Terry Crawford got to come across the street. Terry Crawford got to come across the street. He got to leave ESPN and come to Showtime with Fox.
Definitely.
You responsible for niggas
You
saying,
never heard of it until Terrence Crawford.
Hold the fuck up. So you saying Terrence
You
Bud
never
Crawford
heard of it
is
till
personally responsible for niggas saying he on the other side of the street. This street is this street and he on that street. No, nobody was never saying that before Terrence Bud Crawford.
Never. When have you heard it? And you've been following boxing for a long time.
But I heard this.
No,
What
I
I
did
heard.
hear with you, but I didn't know if that came from you. You know what I mean? I didn't know that was you or that you was the originator of that shit.
You know.
But I thought if you was on the same promotion, because they try to keep in that house so the money could stay there.
They do.
I didn't,
Okay.
Listen, I fought people from PBC.
Like I said, Terry Crawford got to come across the street. Terry Crawford got to come across the street. He got to leave ESPN and come to Showtime with Fox.
Oh shit! Well, they must have switched it up for him now. I see what he's saying.
It's just, you know what I mean? When you trying to fight those top fighters, they you stay over there. Now, if they felt like, you know, all they champions could beat me and I was a cakewalk, like, you know, when I came to the welterweight division, I was small, I was improving, and I didn't have a belt. But soon as I got a belt, they say, man, you on the wrong side of the street.
Terrence Crawford got to come across the street. He got to leave ESPN and come to Showtime with Fox.
I ain't fucking with that dude. It's a risk, you know. And why would we got to go over there and take a risk fighting this fighter when we got 6, 7 welterweights over here? We can fight them all, and we can just.
Can we get both of them in the ring?
He said, I'm fighting Mikey. Then I might fight Sean Porter, Keith Thurman.
So he didn't mention Terrence, huh?
He didn't.
Leave him alone. Hey man, you go and do what you gonna do. We gonna do what we gonna do over here. Froze me out, but you know we here now, and that's history.
And the facts are what the facts are. Fighting Terrence Crawford was not a part of the PBC's original plan for Errol Spence Jr. It's an alteration they had to make due to extenuating circumstances and necessity. The need to deliver big fights and big numbers to the Showtime platform.
They need a big year. It can't be like last year.
At a time when there have already been 2 waves of layoffs at Showtime. Metrics are down and they are trimming the fat.
People at Showtime Boxing like Stefan Espinoza need to prove to their superiors, their higher-ups, why should Showtime stay in the sport of boxing? For what reason should they continue to pour money into the sport? And the only way to do that is to deliver big numbers, big metrics by way of big fights like this one.
Because this is the biggest fight that Errol Spence Jr. can have. You can't afford to waste any resources on a dud like Spence versus Thurman.
You've got to pull out all the stops.
You already did robust numbers with the Davis versus Garcia fight. Now you hope to do that with this fight. And this could be a very big year for Showtime. But that's the rationale.
That is the proverbial why.
The reason they've come around to doing this thing. Make no mistake.
It wasn't their original plan.